Camera.
My name is Johal. I'm chair of the Impact on Communities Coalition.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about the On to Ottawa trek? What happened like in the lead up to it, what you did to prepare for it?
Sure. Back in December of 2008, we had begun a rolling hunger strike where people went without food for 7 days, and we were trying to push the federal government to establish a national housing program. And that project went forward for 76 weeks. So everyday Canadians, people who were professors, some were lawyers, some people were homeless, some people had direct experiences with challenges with housing given the affordability crisis that we're going through in the city. And so over that time period we built up support, and we passed the wooden spoon each week to people, and we decided to figure out an appropriate way and time to end it. And in June of 2010, it was the 75th anniversary of the On to Ottawa trek back in 1935. Unemployed relief camp workers jumped on the boxcars of trains here in Vancouver, and were trying to go all the way out to Ottawa to push for social programs to be implemented. And they were stopped in Regina at the time, and they were stopped by the police. And but eventually, a few months later, the government changed over, and there were investments in social programs that happened. And so we partnered up with labor historians and other people to commemorate that really important event 75 years ago, but also to tie it together with a contemporary social issue like the need for a national housing program. So we combined the red tents with the end of the hunger strike with labor history, and this is really meant to kind of kick off the national portion of the Red Tent campaign, because even though we started here during the Olympics and really did make a splash by being in Ottawa and taking these tents right to Parliament Hill, we had meetings with members of Parliament from a number of the political parties, and so I think that was really exciting to get it started. And I think our next step now is to get to other cities across the country. On the trek, we met in Toronto with housing organizations, grassroots groups, people who have also experienced homelessness. In Ottawa, we did the same thing. We met with Acorn in Ottawa. And so I think one of our next things here, we had a very successful trip. We went on the train, really exciting, and we learned a lot in the process. But one of the next places that we'd really like to focus on is Calgary, because Calgary is the home constituency of Prime Minister Stephen Harper. And even though Calgary is about half the size of Vancouver, there's actually more homeless people in Calgary than there are even here in Vancouver. In Vancouver, we know that we have a full-blown crisis, and we know the government needs to be doing more. In Calgary, in their 2008 homelessness count, there were about 4,000 homeless people just in Calgary. So we're going to take the Red Tent campaign in the coming months right to Calgary, right to the hometown of the Prime Minister, and work with housing groups there to push the Prime Minister and the rest of his Conservative caucus to implement a national housing program in the fall when the Bill C-304 comes back to Parliament.
That's fantastic. What would you, is there any words of advice that you could give to future, I don't know, efforts to promote a national housing campaign and to use the red tents, like what you learned from actually being in Ottawa and setting up like the tents and talking to people?
Yeah, it's interesting. When we tried to set up the tents on the lawn of Parliament Hill, the police came by and were going to fine us $450 for every tent that we put down on the lawn of Parliament Hill. So we negotiated with them. We had to hold them up in the air. We did put one down on the ground, hoping they would fine us, just to have a kind of symbolic kind of dialogue with the police. But they confiscated it, and then they returned it to us. I think the most interesting thing about utilizing the red tents is that it's the beginning point of a conversation.
Absolutely.
That there's the practical side to when people actually use the tents, but also using them as props as part of doing media events. We were able to actually go to an NDP caucus meeting in Ottawa and actually open one in front of the entire caucus. We had people who actually wanted a few tents to take to their home constituency. So I think it's the beginning point of a conversation, and really, we also want to challenge the laws on the ground. When people do use the tents and they get fined by police or by civic bylaws, that we need to have the legal support in place for people to actually be pushing on the ground. So it's not only changing the facts on the ground, but also that we're pushing the policy level debate as well. So it's meant to be functional at a number of levels. And I think that when we can tie in kind of that grassroots organizing, that whatever people are doing on the ground, it's not, should we do the A, B, or C? If we really want a national housing program, it's all of the above. We all have to really kick it up a notch if we're going to make it happen. And we're just starting to see the beginnings of that national conversation. We've been fortunate in Vancouver, fortunate or unfortunate in the sense that we had such a long-term homelessness issue here in the context of a global event like the Olympics coming here, that we pushed the debate civically. We pushed the debate even provincially to a government that wasn't doing very much, that we're actually, it's very rare for us in Vancouver to be pushing forward a debate that's at the national level. We're just geographically so far away from the rest of the country. So it's actually really fortunate that we're actually in a position of moving the national debate from all the way out here in Vancouver, and we just want to continue to speak with places like Regina and Newfoundland and Montreal and all these places. So we need all the help we can get, because it's really going to take a national push to make this happen.
That's fantastic. I know we're doing an action tomorrow in Surrey. Do you recommend holding the tents off of the ground there if we try and set some up?
Well, I don't think you'll get into trouble out in Surrey. I think you'll be totally fine.
Fantastic. Anyways, thank you so much for doing this, and good luck with the rest of it.
Yeah, you bet.
Bye.
Take care.